Hello everyone, in this video lesson we are going to discuss about the general terms of the ecology, a species, habitat, niche, biodiversity, species diversity, genetic diversity, and ecosystems. As you can see from the given name, ecology, it is a branch of biology which has the function, let's say, to study the organisms, to study the environment, and the way, let's say, that how these organisms interact with um, other organisms or with each other, and also the way that they interact to the environment. Let's say that the ecology has a function to study the reasons why such organisms live in a place or in a space. So let's say that the space where a species lives, it is known as the habitat. But what is a species itself? A species, it is a group of organisms which have, let's say, similar morphology and physiology, which means that these organisms are able to breed to each other, to give fertile offsprings, and they are reproductively isolated from other species, which means that this kind of species, for example a cat, is going to be, let's say, is going to breed with another cat, and it will give, let's say, or it should give fertile offsprings in the other generation. And in the moment when a new species is, let's say, discovered, it is given a name which is known as the binomial name, which is, let's say, labeled depending on the binomial system, which means that each organism has a scientific name made up of two names, which are, let's say, the species and the gene. What are ecosystems? Ecosystem, let's say, there are different kind of definitions about the ecosystems. In general, ecosystem, it is a self-contained interacting community of organisms and the environment in which they live and in which they, let's say, interact. But in other words, let's say that the ecosystem, it is a system, or let's say an ecological system made up of biotope and biocenosis. What are biotope and biocenosis? If we can see the picture in here, biotope represents, let's say, the physical environment, which means represents the non-living part, which is made up of the air, the soil, the water, and let's say these tones in here, which are physical environment, and this make the biotope. On the other side, we said the ecological system, such as ecosystem, it is made up of the biotope and biocenosis. Now let's see what is biocenosis. On the picture in here, biocenosis, it is the association between different kind of living organisms inside of a community. So in the picture in here, we have the rabbit, we have the plants inside, different kind of fishes which might be, let's say, in this pond, the flowers in here, the tree, the grass, etc. So all part of the ecosystem or the community that makes the living part, it is known as biocenosis. So we can say that ecosystems are an ecological system made up of biotope and biocenosis. There are different kinds of ecosystems, such as, for example, a pond might be an ecosystem, a desert also might be an ecosystem, a forest might be an ecosystem. What is a niche? A niche, it is, let's say, a very interesting term which defines the role of the organism in the ecosystem. Inside of each ecosystem, there are different kinds of species, and each of them has a particular role in the environment or in the ecosystem in which they live. The niche describes the way that how a living organism obtains energy, how it interacts with both physical environment and other species. So if we see the pictures in here, we are able to see or to understand the concept of niche, which means how do these birds in here, the yellow one, the red one, and the blue one, fit and stay, let's say, or are placed in this plant. Why does the yellow bird inhabits, let's say, the upper parts of the tree, and why the blue bird inhabits the trunk and lower branches? Well, there is an explanation of that which describes that each of them has a role into the environment or in the ecosystem, and this is dependent on the type of the vegetation that they eat, which means that if you can see from the pictures, these birds have different mouth parts, which means that they have different kind of vegetation of the eat. It is different to each of them. That's why they occupy different parts on the plant, depending on the type of the vegetation of the eat, also depending on the mouth parts, depending on the weight of the body, etc. So the way in which how an organism fits in the ecosystem and how, let's say, interacts with other species and with the environment, it is called a niche. Also, you can see the second picture, which is very interesting because it shows 5 different kind of birds that, let's say, each of them has different kind of mouth parts, and it is able, let's say, it has different kind of vegetation that they eat. In the first picture we have a flamingo, which is able to be fed by straining mud through their bills. So you can see that the way or the place in which they in all these seasides, let's say, the way in which they vegetate or they eat, it is different from each other. So the ducks, for example, feed on plants, but the plovers hunt for small insects on the sand. So the way that the birds in here eat, and the way that they have different, or the fact that they have different kind of mouth parts, gives them a specific role into the ecosystem. And the niche is, let's say, the role of this organism in an ecosystem, and it is dependent on the type of the vegetation that they eat, but also, let's say, the fact that they are able to coexist and to interact with each other and with the environment because of this vegetation of the way that they are fed or the way that they eat. Now let's see biodiversity. Biodiversity is a concept in which we have been discussing very much, or in everyday life we hear about biodiversity. Biodiversity can be defined as a degree of variation of life in forms of ecosystem, which means the variety of lives in a specific ecosystem. And depending on this, let's say biodiversity is the variety of life in a specific area, which is determined by the number of the species in that area, but also by the number of the genes and the number of the ecosystem in a region. So depending, let's say, on the number of the species, depending on the number of the genes and the ecosystem, let's say the biodiversity, it is divided in 3 main groups, which are genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. Let's see in general each of them. Species diversity is defined as the number of species and their abundance that live in a particular location. the number of species that live in a certain location, it is called the species richness. And you can see richness. You can see in the first picture that there are different kind of species, and which means that we have a very large diversity of species in a given area. Then we have genetic diversity, which refers to the genetic variability, or let's say that each individual of a species possesses or has genes which are the source of its own unique features. You can see here the picture of dogs, that we have different kind of dogs with different kind of features, and this is why this is because of the fact that we have genetic diversity. And the last picture shows the ecosystem diversity, which means that we have a variety of different ecosystems within an area. For more information, you can see the link in this, which is given in this slide. Thank you.